Welcome, and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Here we've approached 2012, and many people are getting a lot of messages about what our next steps are in human evolution. There's the end of the Mayan calendar, and then, of course, there's the rise of a lot of subconscious thinking about dreams. A lot of people tend to dream, but most of the time they seem to not be able to recall what those dreams are. And when they do, they try to find out, well, what are some of those messages supposed to be meant to be telling us? Then even further so, people actually learn to work with their dreams to see how they can enhance their lives and be better contributors to a wonderful, more loving world. On our book today, we're going to be talking about a book titled Flesh Off the Bone. It's Dream Descent Through Past Lives Trauma. And our guests today are dream therapists and master teachers at the Center for Archetypal Dream Work in Vermont. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guests, Mr. Mark Bergman and Crystal Lancaster. Thank you for joining us here on the program today, folks.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having us.
You betcha. Now,
thanks, Dan. It's Bregman, by the way.
Bregman, okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Common mistake.
Yeah, well, I was in an archetypical dream thing here, so I think I was thinking of Bergman.
Right, archetypal.
Oh, as in Igmar, right.
As in, yes. Now, tell us about your work and how you came to create Flesh Off the Bone.
That's quite a story, Dan. Well, Mark and I have been colleagues and friends and partners in creating North of Eden for many years. But 3 years ago, we had the opportunity to open up to a romantic relationship, and so we did. And in doing so, it opened the way to a lot of dreams from our collective past life. And as we opened to our hearts to love, it opened up all kinds of caverns that we felt impelled to explore. So that was the genesis of that book, was the exploration of our own personal past life trauma that we had shared.
But of course, that's just a one element. I mean, that's just the latest kind of exploration on a personal level. We have 6 other books and 40 years of exploration, which parallels Carl Jung's The Red Book, which came out about 3 years ago, which had to do with his spiritual journey. So we've been doing this work for a long time and beginning to bring it into the world. And of course, Carl Jung is what I call the second Jung. There was the Jung that taught about analytical psychology, and then there was the Jung that hid the dream journey, and for a lot of reasons. And we like for this hour to explore a little bit the stages of the work, what the work is, and why he hid the book, and why the work is really challenging. We're talking about the show about evolution and what that really means in terms of dreaming and the kind of a different attitude about ourselves and dreams is required, which is the whole point of the Red Book and the whole point of doing the dream work. And so I don't know if I can just jump in here to open this up a little bit. I'd like to.
Mr. Bregman, take the lead.
Okay. So
you noticed I pronounced your name correctly there, right?
It was perfect.
Oh, good.
Got it.
I don't want him starting to cast spells where I start having dreams of Godzilla chasing me through Portland, much less Tokyo. So
absolutely not, especially if
because being a lucid dreamer, I can fly away pretty easily. So anyway, go ahead.
So I guess we want to start with there's 3 stages of the work, or 3 stages of dreaming. And the first stage is when the dreams, not in an archetypal sense of, jumping into fiery molten lava and that kind of thing, facing off to bears. And these are more archetypal dreams, encounters with the divine, They're more advanced dreaming, which people can have even in the early stages of the work. But the harder part of the dream work is encountering oneself as being off, or being, the dreams have an intention to find your soul, and the first thing they seem to do is tell you that you're not it. Krista, you want to jump in a little bit?
Well, in other words, who we think we are, Dan, is often turned upside down when we start tuning into the meaning of our dreams and having them decoded in a way. So where we're identified with being a super mom or a great boss or a radical or a great banker or whatever it is, that often the dreams that will put the mirror up to that reality and say, but actually, you know what, and often with a tremendous amount of humor, this is not who you are. You are the one behind the door with the gorilla pounding. And the dream will ask us to begin to explore what is that to stand in the fear of the gorilla pounding on the door, and what is he bringing? What is the message? So that we become, as Carl Jung spoke of in the Red Book, to become the part of ourselves that has not yet been lived out, the who we are not. And so often people who are called to doing this kind of work are wanting to know, have some kind of longing to, and they know that there's some other deeper, realer part of themselves. They just don't know how to get to it. And what the dreams do is give us very, very specific lessons, sort of step by step, in how to undo the sort of false self.
You know, right. I was just thinking as you were describing that, Krista, is that, you know, there are so many books over the ages that talk about dreams. And there's still a longing for a lot of people to really know what dreams are. And you can see through your work, you guys really, you delve deep, and I think as people get exposed to your work that they tend to probably resonate in a way where they take on dreaming in a much different light than they probably ever could have expected.
Well, that's really true. Becomes a way to unfold and to become, and it becomes a way to open up spiritually, you know, as well as to become the real being that we are.
Right. One of the issues that is confronted is our own belief that we can make ourselves, that we, our conscious selves, is the conscious self in ourselves. So we always try to be better. Those that are on spiritual paths always, of course, want to be better and want to explore different consciousnesses. But I'll give you an example of how the dream reflects this. Oftentimes in more advanced work, you'll have children in dreams, and the reaction to the children of the dreamer is typically to help them, love them. If they're in water, they're often under the water. They'll want to rescue them, not understanding that the water is a place of essence and consciousness, and we're afraid of it. So we pull the child out. But even in the positive sense of being in a loving relationship with a child, what the dream ultimately wants you to become is the child, which means that you, as the one who's parenting or caring for the child, has to die. And this is the hard part, because we always think about consciousness and evolution as the development of what we are now to something more. It's hard to think that, oh my God, I'm going to have to be something that's so radically different than what I am in terms of consciousness that it's going to reflect as I'm going to die, or the self that I know is going to die. So taking it to more the extension of consciousness or growth, you'll suddenly, for the advanced person or the person that's working on that level, suddenly is in their dream the child. They're suddenly looking at a doorknob 2 feet higher than them, feeling with some situation completely in an emotional state that is completely new, because it's not the child of a 4 or 8 year old. It's a spiritual child which has a deeper feeling sense of itself and the divine world. So suddenly you're the child in a dream, and then you know and you feel, okay, this isn't my brain making myself better. This is me becoming something without my intention. Mm-hmm. But that's the edge that this dream rests on, is the idea of changing from within, not from trying to, like, categorically create a better you. It's a very different thing and Jung calls it alchemy. It's the alchemy of consciousness that as feelings are being worked through, you without any intention begin to become this other consciousness, which I would say is the evolution that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense, Dan? That was a lot of...
Well, yeah, you're taking a look at using your dreams, and I mean, you take a look at the title of your book, first off, Flesh Off the Bone, but then as you look into the pages, you begin to realize, for instance, there was one particular dream that you were diagnosed with cancer and, in fact, died. And then, as Mark describes, there was sort of a union there to where you were descending into that pain. You were in that, and it's sort of a way, as my understanding is that you're in it, you live it, you sort of capture the gift,
right,
and then you come back into, we'll call that a separate reality, into this reality, and you emerge to where perhaps something like fear, just doesn't really have a big role in your life anymore.
Right. Well, I guess what I hear you speaking about is the cycle of healing and the sort of going down into the descent into something like the fear of dying, to feel it, to actually not, kind of leap away from it, like we're all really doing all the time in some ways, is leaping away from feeling our fear of death, but actually entering into it. I think with that dream, I let go of a layer of resistance to dying, and in that there was the peace of surrender, is what I recall. Mm-hmm. So I think of it as like a series of cycles, because I'll still have an experience of fear that will open me up to another sort of tunnel or wave of some long-lost feeling that might be connected to love or joy or grace.
No, right, there has to, one thing to understand, and I think it's the pinnacle of the book, and for me personally, it was after 40 years, I mean, it was another learning, and that I had not done, and that the whole point of going to your trauma to reclaim the soul, because of course somewhere in there, the soul and the trauma are linked. Surprisingly, I wouldn't have thought that years ago. And that the point is, you go to the moment of the wound, which is often in a past life, we don't even recall it, but the dreams bring it up. The point where we were betrayed or feel like, the Lone Ranger didn't come to help us, the horrible thing that happened, and we reacted, we got hurt, and we were traumatized, we left our bodies, we did this or that or the other thing. But the bottom line is, why go back there is the question, and it turns out that when you go back there, and if you go through all the layers of the work and the way that it's directed, you find that the love that wasn't there when you died in a terrible way is suddenly there. And that opens the healing, and we don't realize that how much of our behavior is really linked to something that is really got a grip on us, a wound that never heals, and we often project that into the world, of course, that try to, even though it may not fit, we try to make it fit by being in situations that reflect the past. But regardless of that's a confusing issue. But it's always off because it's usually something from earlier. So the dream addresses it, and if the trauma is in this life, it'll address that first. But the point I want to say is that why go through it? That's the biggest question anybody's ever going to ask is why do you have to go down there? What's the point? Why can't we just meditate and live and pray? And it's not because of any other reason. I mean, I've had to learn this because I would ask the same question years ago. Why are dreams going here? It's not where I wanted to do. It's not why I wanted to do the dream work. I wanted people to be happy. Instead, they're going into these hard places. And I've had to learn myself in my own avoidance, this is where the love is. Mm-hmm. The love can be other places, but then there's always this wound that blocks, you call it evolution. We have to go through the past to get to the future. In fact, Carl has one of these great chapters in the Red Book, if I can remember it, Journey to Hell in the Future. That was that. So what does that mean? And Journey to Hell is trauma. It's the past, trauma. In the future means you have to go back to go forward. Mm-hmm. Very difficult material, and that's why he didn't put it out. But it's out now, and we've been working that edge for a long time. So, it's hard because people don't link trauma with spirituality very easily. They don't think they work together. And there's been many books written that show that that's not possible to put those together. And it seems to me, from the work we've been doing, that it is the way that it actually works. Krista?
Well, I was going to just add in there that, Dan, I think the reason that we wrote this book was because we found that really opening our hearts opened up this deep trauma, and that a way to avoid deeper trauma is by not opening up your heart. So there's so many people out there who long for love and yet wonder why, it doesn't work out, relationships, fall apart. And I really wanted to write this book, Flesh Off the Bone, to show that there really was a descent through the dreams, and the dreams would take you all the way through to open up those blocks to love and to bring you into a place of being able to know both inner and outer love in relationship, and that it was possible, because sometimes people say you can't really heal from trauma. You can manage it or you can do different techniques. But we found, by going through our own process that we write about in the book, that trauma can be totally healed in this alchemical way that Mark's speaking about. And I really wanted people to know that it is possible, not that actually trauma is like a portal to the deepest healing that you can actually know.
I was just thinking here when you talk about trauma, Krista, there's a part in your book here, and this is, I think, a really good place to start. As you say, we must face our trauma. We must go where we are not told to go. If we face into our trauma, then we will face into dying to self, into sitting in that chair forgetting when we die to self, we die to the self that knows God's love. The self does not live in post-traumatic stress disorder. And what's interesting about that statement, and you talk about trauma because you go on to talk about, for instance, that we may have to face something scary in a dream, like falling into a volcano or from a great height, or, this never-ending descent, or it could be an alligator, it could be shot. And I remember when I was about 4 years old is the time I remember my first nightmare, and it actually haunted me for, off and on for about a year, 2 years, and then I finally went to my mother and I said, hey, this is what's going on. It actually had Godzilla was chasing me through a field. Uh-huh. And I said, this is what's going on, and, I could never see him, but I knew that there he was. He was in the field. I could feel the thundering footsteps, the boulders that were, being tossed, hurling, and landing next to me. And so, you could hear this, and, what was interesting is I would say, what am I supposed to do about this? She says, simply just turn and face up to him. And I said, well, okay, sure.
Well, you had a really wise mother.
Yeah, especially somebody who had me at the age of 16.
Wow.
What was fascinating about this is that not only did I do that, but through the years I began doing more and more of this on my own. Nobody ever told me to do this. And, well, to this day, lucidity, the whole gamut of things, has actually, I guess, been gifted as a result of this work. And it's fun to tell people about these things because, these are very real things. So when you talk about, for instance, facing fears, I believe there was a Sonoy tribe over in China that this is one of the things they do because they really work with dreaming. And obviously what you're saying here is pretty much the same thing as go into that trauma, find out what the gifts are, because love and trauma or love and pain are the same thing as you describe in your book.
Right. Through the doorway of our greatest fears and our deepest pain are the lost states of joy and grace and love. Mm-hmm. And so, what we really want to put out there, Dan, is what you're speaking about, is that there is a way to walk toward the scariest thing that's shown in our dream for you, Godzilla, and your mom was so right. Just turn and face him, because often these figures that we're so scared of, or these scenarios, are, sort of emissaries of the divine who are actually bringing us, down and through, the greatest horror or the greatest sorrow that we've known, so that we get the part of ourselves back that we had to jettison when we couldn't tolerate those feelings.
Mm-hmm. Right. And are we on?
Yes.
What?
For a moment, I thought Mark was at a loss for words. For those of you just tuning in, you're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program talking about the book Flesh Off the Bone, Dream Descent Through Past Lives Trauma. Our guests today, Mr. Mark Bregman and Krista Lancaster. Now, going into the depths of our fears within our dreams, our nightmares, if you will, being able to face those, to be able to experience those things, what are some things that you could share with our listeners that would help enhance this experience to be able to achieve the goals that you set for them?
Well, just to add that we have a mechanism in our psyches, which we call the gyroscopy, that like a gyroscope, and what it does is because if you don't have a connection to your soul, you don't have that love that infuses libido and creates this sense of spiritual well-being and joy. If you don't have that, this other mechanism tries to keep us okay, so we often will feel either depressed, hopeless, or the other side, which it tries to swing and back and forth, is to feel like we're on top of the world, or what we're doing is meaning. So it's the first thing the dream tries to show us is where the deeper feelings, the deeper love, the deeper whatevers, have to compete with the way we feel now. Now, if you're miserable and you really don't like it, it's easier to do this work. If you're successful and you have a lot of meaning out of what you do, then it's a lot harder to want to explore the depths because things are going really well, or you happen to have a gyroscopy that makes you feel good in a way that, you don't want to jeopardize that by going into harder feelings. So I just want to put out, like there is this mechanism that makes it really resist us going underneath our shame, our depression, our mania, or, making ourselves too big. It's like Alice in Wonderland. She was too big and then she was too small. Before she could go down, she had to be the right size. And so breaking that ego part down is a very difficult process, and then underneath it is where all the feelings are whirling about. Of course, some people, those feelings are already up, and that's easier for them to do this kind of work because they're already feeling all this stuff, and the dreams will totally be there for you if you're feeling dreams. If you're feeling those feelings. Krista?
Well, just going back to your question, Dan, I think what you're wanting is to see how your listeners can connect with what we're speaking about, how they can begin to listen to their dreams. Did I get that right?
Yes, because take a look. I'm sure that you've been in stores over the years. I mean, as you were alluding to earlier, Mark, 40 years of doing this kind of work. That's a long time. There are a lot of books out there that have dreams interpreted. And I've picked these up, and I've taken a look, and although these are best intentions and maybe the symbology might have some truth in it, I kind of go, me personally, my opinion, this is nonsense. That's just me, though. Okay.
Me too.
How can you say a dog means this? Exactly. And I don't mean to undermine the work they're doing, but at the same time, I think so many people are misled in some ways, in many ways actually, about what the dream process can really bring for them. And obviously, in your workshops, this must resonate with a true chord because they come and they see you and go, well, I was told that my dream meant this. When in reality, when you begin to show them how to go into it, to feel, describe the day, so forth. Go ahead.
We couldn't agree with you more. And in the process of working with dreams, whether it's one-on-one, which we do, or in groups, it is always about what the parts of the dream mean to each dreamer.
Right.
So, a moose in the woods is going to mean a different thing to me than an elk.
To George W. Bush. I gotcha.
Right, exactly. So, it's like developing a lexicon or vocabulary for each dreamer of what these parts mean, and it's through the feeling associations that the juice of the dream is really revealed. And so it's by entering into those places that it's a felt thing. It's like it's not like, here is the word for your dream. It's like, well, how does it feel to go inside? What is it like to be this dreamer facing this challenge of the scary man on the street with the gun, or the old hag coming into the kitchen, or the beautiful girl sitting quietly in the living room. I mean, I think I'm really excited by what you're saying because I think people do seek, and we know this, they seek and go to sites looking for meaning, and there is so much meaning, and that's why we've really written, is so that people can know that there are depths to their dreams to plumb that can actually open up to whole new realities. So one of the things on a very practical level I want to suggest is anybody who's listening, if you would like a real live dream therapist from North of Eden to respond in a personal way, a real live person, to your dreams, you can go to our website, which is northofeden.com, and there's a place where you can submit a dream, and one of us will write back to you and give you a real sense of how we work with dreams in this very personal, associative way. And so, that's something we offer free for folks.
Yeah, I want to touch on one since I kind of opened up the rabbit hole, if you will, a little bit here, Krista. And that is, okay, here's one that I've heard over and over, and I can never get this one, okay. I heard, or they say, that in a dream when you fall, if you actually land or hit the ground, that you die. Now, first of all, I would like to know who they were that actually said this in the first place. I've heard this over many years.
I just
Does anybody have a clue who started this nonsense?
Yeah, it's nonsense.
I just had a dream where I was, I've been dealing with a lot of my fear. One way of dealing with it in the world is I ski and swim. It's just terrifying to me because of whatever past life trauma around my neck, and I ski a lot. And I had this dream where I was on a cliff, looking down off a mountain that where you can ski, and I just stepped over the cliff, and I fell, and this hand was under me, brought me down to the bottom, and then I realized I was a boy in a ski school, and all these 9, 10, 11-year-old boys had their face on a ski, and I was looking for my face. Of course, I didn't know what I looked like because I realized I've been an old man for a long time. So how do I know what I would look like as a boy? But it was that moment where I knew I was the boy, and the fear was no longer frightening. It was like I could step into the fear, and I've been doing it for so long. It became alchemized to the point where I was able to step into it, and from there, suddenly I'm the boy in my dream. It's a great achievement, and I feel it in my life now, and I don't try to be the boy and struggle with my ego. I just feel like the ego is dying to the boy, and I'm moving. I've been doing this work for a long time, and have to say it's with the great graciousness of my beloved Krista that I've been able to do this work, this deeper work. But so we do have falling dreams, and I've been working. I have a huge practice, and I supervise other people with big practices. So a lot of dreams come through, and most those dreams, it's really about letting go into fear and surrender, and the idea of hitting the ground and dying. There's no such thing as death anyway in the psyche. The only thing that dies is our perceptions, our false perceptions, and the pathology that feeds on them. So, there is a truth, which is eternal life, which is actually embedded in the dreams. So that when you breathe water, or you fall, or you're in fire, or you're dying of cancer, if the dream will typically take you through to, if you actually die in your dream, to the other side, where you're suddenly dead but you're alive. It depends what they want to teach you. Sometimes they just want to teach you don't surrender, and sometimes they want to teach you that there's no death. I mean, these things that we think are challenged by these glorious dreams, when the time is right for us to learn that there's nothing to fear except fear itself. Mm-hmm. I didn't say that, but...
Well, yeah, we were still wondering who they were that said this idea that when you fall and hit the ground, you die. Yeah, because this is such a permeated, almost a belief, if you will, and I'm like, who started this?
Well, I believe that something in dreams that's bad is going to hurt us.
Right.
And the thing you always do in dreams and dream assignments is you face the thing that's after you. Because you have to, running from anything never helps. Even if what you're running from is evil, evil will outrun you anyway. The bear in the woods is faster than you, so why run? So learning to face into whatever glorious thing or monstrous thing it is really the first step of, nothing can hurt you, but running is the worst thing, and that's typically, or we fight back in a violent way. So, I think this is just a collective belief that we all have, that our knee-jerk reaction, 90% of the people in their dreams initially are always, I'm not going over the cliff, or I'm going to, it's always against facing into fear. That's one of the biggest things. So I think whoever said it was really everybody.
Oh.
It's just we all believe. And changing that and doing it differently in your homework, which allows you to feel into deep feeling, changes your dream immediately. Suddenly you're not being chased by lions, you're not falling into the crevasse. suddenly your dreams have changed. And so whenever you face a fear, whenever you face a hurt, and really feel into it, your next dreams will be different and take you deeper. So one dream doesn't solve the problem, it opens the door to the next dream.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating stuff here for the listeners. Flesh Off the Bone is the book, Dream Descent Through Past Life Trauma. Now, when people come to your retreat, okay, do you feel that there's a common theme pretty much people are showing up for, even though it may have a different guise or a different story or a different experience?
Absolutely. In fact, often in a 5-day retreat here in Vermont, in a small group of 12, there'll be a common theme that just arises, and it may be, loss around love or betrayal or, some kind of experience that people share. So, in a way, the journey is universal, and then, the details of how that fills out in a person's life are unique to them. But I think the reason why, one of the wonderful reasons for doing group work is that you get to see the common themes, and it's a great shame buster, because when you deal with the level of your dreams, all the sort of most intimate things about you, in a way, come out, and everybody is being revealed, and everyone is vulnerable, and so it opens the way to a kind of acceptance and openness about, the worst things we think about ourselves are actually things that everybody at some point feels.
How long does it usually take? You say your retreat is about 5 days, correct?
Yes, in Vermont, 5 or 6 days. I think we're having one this summer that's 6 days long.
Yeah, we have retreats all over the world, and on our website people can see where we are. So they don't have to come to Vermont. They could come to Esalen or Kripalu or Hollyhock or France. We have places all over.
Or even, say, Chili's, for instance.
Where?
Say Chili's. It's sort of a running joke between my wife and I. When we first put up our website about 8 years ago, it was funny because we were getting hits from a place called Say Chili's, and we both looked at each other like, where is Say Chili's? So we looked it up on a map. It's never mind.
Well, we've not been there either.
No, but I think what I wanted to say was that, as you have these 5-6 day retreats, is that I can feel, and I'm sure you see this, in the first day to 2 days, people are very reluctant. They may share a little bit, but then as they see others, it's like stepping on the dance floor. When the first couple gets up there, then it feels more comfortable for the herd to jump in there, and then you can't get anybody off the dance floor. By the 4th day, you probably couldn't get anybody to really stay quiet, and by the 5th day, everybody wants to leap in and share everything. What do you think the hesitancy is with people?
Yeah, because they've all cracked open to some deeper place inside themselves. But,
the dream will crack you. That's the thing. You won't crack on your own, but the dream is already underneath the crack, and it gets addressed. And what a way to know each other by virtue of your dream, working on a particular piece of work, and the dream's perception of it. Wow, we're all looking for a reality that we can trust, and there it is in the dream. And every person who has a dream, even though it's really different from how they present themselves, they all understand it because it's their dream and it's given to them specifically around the place that they need to be conscious.
So, Dan, on the subject of retreats, we're coming to your state of Oregon soon.
Very good.
You're in Portland, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know Brighton Bush Hot Springs?
I do, just outside of Salem, as a matter of fact.
Okay, well, we are coming there in May to do I believe it's a 4-day retreat, and so I don't know, is this a good time to tell people about that?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, so we are going to do, from May 21st to 25th, a wonderful dream immersion retreat at Brighton Bush Hot Springs. And I think the group will be about 20 people. We're going to be in some fabulous yurt by the river. It looks like an extraordinary place in the state forest. I haven't been there, but we're very, very much looking forward to going. I think it's about 3/4 of the way filled, this group. But if anybody listening suddenly thinks, I want to know what this is about, feel free to go on the Brighton Bush website, and there are still some spaces left, and we'd be delighted to know you and work with your dreams. So we're also going to be at Hollyhock on Cortez Island in British Columbia in the fall in October. So that's another time we're coming west. This is our western year. We'll be at Hollyhock at Cortez Island October 12th through the 17th. So we've just come from California, so we're just kind of wanting to open up this work to the Western frontier, and people can really jump in without having done any prior work with us. It's a way of finding out what this work is really like by experiencing it. We have evolved a really dynamic way of enacting the dreams in the group process, so that each dreamer who comes to a retreat has the opportunity to be the center stage and have their dreams worked in a cluster, and have the people in the group act out the parts of the dream, so that you actually get to really enter into it and have the experience in your dreams. And, an extraordinary knowing comes out of this stepping into the different parts. Both the parts that are opening and stepping into the part of the part that doesn't want us to open.
Mm-hmm. And this work is generally one-on-one work and still is, and the idea of bringing this out into a form, it's not meant, the group process isn't meant to replace the one-on-one, but it is a great way to understand it and then decide if you want to do one-on-one or you just want to occasionally step into retreats. But unfortunately, we can't have a person always be in a group. So so the one-on-one work is the standard that most people continue, and then they add the retreats, which is really great because you feel very isolated in the work. Years ago, when I started the work, the first 20 years, there's no retreats. People would say, "Oh, I feel so alienated because I'm changing and there's no one I can relate to, and people don't understand what I'm saying about who I'm becoming." So that is totally solved now. We have a community and all over, really, that's bound by the retreats.
I was going to ask both of you, and I suppose I can now, is that as people do this dream work, what types of changes have you experienced in them, or have they experienced, should I actually say? And what actions have they taken toward this change aside from being involved with your retreat?
Well, I'd love to ask, I have one of my colleagues here, if they'd like to share a bit about that, because I was wondering if you would ask that question. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. So, Bill.
Hi, this is Bill.
Thanks for sharing, Bill.
One of the big ways that it really changes who you are in terms of the inner work and where you can see how people change in the world is it really changes their relationships with other people. So, like with my partner Sue and I, whereas I used to run from that gorilla and run toward usually a female figure in my dreams because I was always looking for something that was missing in my life, I would also project that onto my partner. So, as you could imagine, that would make my relationships complicated and there would always be issues. And so it's really a new thing when I'm in need to not always be projecting that need for God onto my partner or the need for something deeper, to have a deeper experience. It changes how I am in a relationship, and you'll see this with a lot of people. It really changes who you are when you're in a relationship because you're not projecting everything that you need on that inner level onto the outer world, and then projecting whatever hurt you have from not having that onto your partner also, which you can see people are always in these conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Or the trauma issue that we've been talking about, then that trauma is always projected on your relationship. There's always some crisis and drama and soap opera that people are in, because instead of feeling that trauma in themselves, they are making it about their partner. And as you face into your own trauma, or as I've faced into my trauma, that dynamic really starts to shift in your relationship and in my relationship.
Wow, fascinating. Very good. Thank you for telling us how that all worked for you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's one for you, both of you. What do you think it would be like if Kim Kardashian approached your workshop?
Oh, if she came, like a holiday.
There's an interesting one there, because you think of how people, of course, you sometimes I think you just get tired of how marketing and advertising seem to put people in your face over and over. Before it was Paris Hilton, before that it could have been Miley Cyrus. And you get to a point you just pull your hair out, as you see these people constantly in your check stands, on magazine covers with all their problems and so forth. And you think to yourself, what is it within us that gets to a point, is it really truly oversaturation, or is there something about these lives that we feel like acting out and punishing them and beating up on them? I just thought you could take it from there if you could.
Oh, it's interesting. You mean what we project our need?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I would say that's
It's kind of like what Bill just said, like we play out, sometimes we have pretty boring lives. I guess we can play them out by looking at other people in reaction, as if that's what life's about. And I guess it is, when you're not sitting deep in yourself and like that. We are kind of pretty expanded in the world, and we do have some famous people who are in the work, and everybody wants to, whatever, and it's great to, everybody's the same. Everybody is separated from their traumas, and some people are famous and they say great things, and people really think that they're the divine thing, but really from my experience, they're suffering even worse because they're trapped by everybody's projection that they're wonderful, and that they can't admit that actually I'm not. I'm talking about people who have a positive effect in the world, but are really trapped by the projection that they want to be that person, but that they're not. And what a wonderful thing, whether you're famous or you're not, to be that person, to be the one that stands like Siddhartha, stands in consciousness of the love and the divine, and from that place, being a teacher. What we want in the world are people that teach from their child self, from their soul, not teach from this idea of becoming a wise old man. Nobody's a wise old man. We're all children that learn from the wise old man that's somewhere inside of us. I remember I was at a dream thing, and we were talking about this work, and one of the persons who has a big beard said, well, I believe in the wise old man. Like, I'm the wise old man. I said, but you can't be the wise old man except being an arrogant fool. And, of course, that didn't go over well. And so the only thing wise is what's in us helping us. And it's hard to, we always want to be the one, or we want to hide. One or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Going back to what you kind of opened with, Dan, was, the theme of evolution. And, I think that the evolution on the sort of ego plane is sort of, been played out and out and out and out to its outer limits. And the evolution of consciousness from the soul, is perhaps, our hope that if enough people are willing to, drop off the cliff or breathe the water or face the bear or to open up. It's really about opening, evolution through opening up to the wisest, most extraordinary part of ourselves, not the ego that wants to, run things a certain way.
It's certainly the ego that keeps the nightmare alive until you're willing to stand still and, face it. I know there was a dream, actually over many years I've had this particular dream where I'm in a car and it keeps going faster and faster, and of course you're in traffic, so you need to find ways to dodge that. You're hitting the brake, but no matter how much you hit it, it seems to go faster or at least maintain the speed. You're going curbs, you're doing all this kind of nonsense. Then finally I just got to a point, I said, I'm going to have to let this go because this is a dream, and just kind of release or surrender myself. And it was amazing how you'd bounce off the curbs and whatever it was, but I never crashed. And it turned into a wild roller coaster right after a while. But, the fear that I felt before I actually allowed myself to let go was pretty amazing, because you were always in fear, I'm about to crash. And, when it comes to a crash, you feel there's this, this injury, if not that you may even die in this crash. But
right.
None of those things are really as real as we make them tend to be. And that's what's interesting, I think, about nightmares.
Well, that's what I would want to say right there, is that the crash already happened.
Right.
When you have a dream where you're about to crash and you're afraid, usually it's because something terrible, and again, it's regressive, a past life, it already happened. So you don't remember it. Of course, how would you remember it? You're in this life. And so you're afraid for something that already happened. That's why you have the dream. So it's never that you're afraid that you might crash. You're actually afraid because you did. And so that's the first step in moving into the trauma work. Those are typical dreams of people who are beginning to deal with their fear around something that already happened and their fear of facing it. So it's really, I look at a dream like that as a portal, a door, where by feeling the feeling of something that already happened, then it excites the psyche and you start getting other dreams that might take you deeper at some point.
Krista, I'm starting to come under the impression, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Mark is very passionate about this.
No kidding.
Yeah. Now, Krista, I wanted to address this question to you because you are a woman, but I'm sure Mark will have some great insight about this as well. We are beginning to hear a lot of the feminine divine and rising, and you really talk off and on, especially about Jesus and Mary in your book, how they seem to be complements or are complements to each other. What do you believe is this feminine rising that we're beginning to hear so much about?
Well, for me, I mean, and my exploration through my own dreams and others is about the girl, that there is a girl who comes in our dreams, and that was really the beginning for me when we went to France and we investigated our past lives there. It was the girl that emerged as this very wise, knowing being in my dreams. And, I had to listen to her and begin to hear her voice in me. Recently in the fall, I had a dream where I followed her into a pool of water instead of standing with the other sort of more maternal grown-up figures who were organizing things. So there was this contrast between the organizing, responsible part of me and the soul girl who just wants to be in the water, the element of feeling. So that consciousness, I think, needs to be differentiated from the sort of, Amazon kind of women that was really that sort of ideal of the feminine was held up when I sort of came of age in the late 70s, sort of powerful woman. And I just would like to differentiate that this girl is extremely vulnerable and extremely open, extremely feeling part of ourselves for men and women. And in opening up to her, one also finds this extraordinary potency
Right. So I just want to add there's a girl-boy soul, which is really like the anima and the animus. It's an androgynous figure that breaks off in two because we live in those two hormonal gender experiences. But the thing about it is that men become girls too. It's like in the Fisher King when the man is looking for his soulmate, he's really looking for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what I've been getting when I bring up this particular topic here is that the feminine rising is the way what I have pictured, even in my own mind, but as it's been described, especially from Celtic traditions, is here's a feminine rising that opens its arms and says, it's time to lay down the aggression. It's time to lay down the hatred. It's time to feel the embrace of love, to know that you are nurtured and you are appreciated, and to quit beating the hell out of each other as much as you have. And you can even take it to an even deeper level. It's though as this Mother Earth, as we tend to always call it, is finally saying, look, kids, I gave you this wonderful playground to play in with all you'll ever need. What do you got to make it so tough on yourself for? And I'm going to come to you through dreams and experiences to let you know, would you just relax? Knock it off. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that if we're the soul, that's exactly how we can be, because the soul is always knows that you're right. This is the playground, but we can't fake it. I think we try to I can be the girl or the boy, but then in your dreams you're not. To really be the girl and the boy is that allows us to live not in our attempt to create a better world, but we are the better world. Carl talks about this, and he says you can't come from a place of emptiness to find God or to find love or peace. You have to come from fullness. And I went, what does that mean? And I understood. Yeah, if you're the soul, you're full. The soul is always full. When you're not the soul, you're empty. And if you try to fill it up, you're still not the soul. Even if you fill it up with good things, you're still not the soul. Mm-hmm. And that's really the edge that everything rests on. It's not about making things better. It's about becoming full, Carl would say. And if you try to make things better, it always runs down into being some kind of judgment, right, wrong, you're not doing it, I am. It gets all mixed up because unless you feel the fullness, we're empty. We're still empty, and we're chasing our tails around. I mean, Carl's very clear that of this juxtaposition of the ego attempting to be good versus the soul's pregnant self, pregnant with its future as well.
Krista, what are your final thoughts?
I guess I'd like to just invite your listeners to take a look at our website, northofeden.com. If anything we've spoken about today grabs your interest, there's all these amazing stories and photographs, and there's music, there's an online journal. There are, wonderful writings and poems by people who've done this work. So if anything is sort of, jumping out at you, it's just a great resource, and also shows where we're going to be and what we're doing. But on a personal level, I think the thought is that you can heal trauma, and you can emerge in a whole new way through following your dreams.
And to add one more thing for the listeners, from my perspective, is when you find yourself falling from that great height, you don't have to land. You can just simply reach your arms out and start flying and take yourself to a whole new level of experience. The book is Flesh Off the Bone, Dream Descent Through Past Life Trauma. Our guests today, Ms. Krista Lancaster and Mark Bregman. I want to thank you both for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you so much, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
You betcha. I want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. Be sure to visit us at our website, which is beyond50radio.com. We do have a free weekly e-newsletter. We'll also be archiving this show onto our blog. Be sure to visit us there. That way you can listen at your own convenience and also share it with others as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you again for joining us. This is Beyond 50, and remember, live your day past halfway.